talk about that. Because I think people would have questions, right? What is love in its truest form? What does that look like? I think that's critically important for our relationships, but in particular under this umbrella of neonarcissism, really knowing what your boundaries are and what those deal breakers are will help you to not stay in an unhealthy relationship for extended periods of time.
Really, this is where we run into this cognitive dissonance when a relationship with a narcissist, especially a neo-narcissist, ends, because our unconditional love just can't turn off that quick. We still have to love our love out. We still have to honor that unconditional part of ourselves that has invested into the relationship. So a lot of people will actually question themselves, like, why am I not getting over this person? Why do I still miss this person? Why do I still love this person? Well, because you love them unconditionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, another metaphor that I like to use with this is, our moods are like waves on top of the ocean or whatever. And our love is really deep rooted at the bottom, where it's really unmovable. So it doesn't matter what's happening on the surface. Like you're saying, it's still a 10 out of 10 down here.
Yeah.
But with a neo-narcissist, you don't get that whatsoever. And this is why it's so confusing for those that love unconditionally when you run into mood-based love. And now we're into the mood-based love side of it, because it's like their love is contingent entirely on their mood. So as soon as their mood shifts, all of a sudden you get discarded, and your mind won't be able to comprehend how conditional that love actually is. So even if you've had to set a boundary with this person or distance yourself from this person, as painful as it is, you get to continue loving them for as long as you need to, moving towards your own healing.
Yeah, and that's the other part about that phrase, you do not get to control how much I love you. And what you're saying is that when you end a relationship with someone, so if a narcissist is mood-based, they want to discard you, they also want to end you sending the love to them, which is really unhealthy for you to do, because to have that connection with somebody you are unconditionally are used to giving that love, that is healthy for you to do.
Welcome to the Neonarcissism podcast, hosted by emotional intelligence specialists Kim and Jackie of Element Q, alongside strategic psychotherapist Brad Kaufman.
Well, hi everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I'm pretty excited about it. We're gonna talk about something new, and our topic today is something that Brad coined the phrase for, which is mood-based love.
Traditionally, of course, most people know what conditional love is and unconditional love is. And when it comes to the narcissist, especially the neo-narcissist, what we're dealing with is, of course, conditional. And this is where I kind of threw in the phrase of mood-based love. Basically, their love is contingent or conditional on how they're feeling. How are you making them feel that day? Have they had a good esteem boost that day? And so their understanding of love is connected solely to mood and emotion. It's not connected to anything deeper than that. Now, through the study of more ancient teachings, especially in theology, we talk about love as being infinite and eternal. So there's no way for love to actually be just limited to emotions. And believe it or not, a number of years ago, there was this debate in the world of psychology: is love a feeling or is love an action? And they were going back and forth, and it's like, this is ridiculous. Because love can be expressed through action, and it can be experienced through feeling. But those are just conduits to the larger notion of what love actually is. In my experience, my ex could never understand, if we weren't seeing eye to eye on something, how at the end of the night, I could give her a kiss on the forehead, look her in the eyes, and say, I love you. Like she could not wrap her head around that. And she would even ask me, why do you say you love me? Or what do you mean you love me?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, my love isn't based on emotion. So it's not like this whimsical. It's like, this is what true unconditional love is all about. It doesn't matter the feeling or the mood. And one of my daughters, my middle daughter, when she was 5 years old, taught me a lesson on this because she was upset with me that I said it was time for her to go to bed. So as I was tucking her into bed, she basically looked at me and said, "Daddy, I love you, but I'm not very happy with you." And then she kind of threw out this metaphor that her love was the sun, so it was always there, but her feeling towards me was like a cloud. And so like this cloud of kind of frustration came out in front of the sun. So even though the sun is still there, we all know the sun is there. It's like, sure, the clouds come over, but that doesn't remove the sun. However, for the narcissist, basically, at least this is what I have observed and this is what I've experienced, is when the cloud comes out, they have no object permanence. So if you can't see the sun isn't there. If you can't feel the sun isn't there.
So yeah, the sun is there for the person who is being loving.
Yeah.
But is the sun ever really there for the person who can't receive it or can't give it in a healthy way? Real love, what real love is.
Well, and those are important words, I think, too, the giving and the receiving. Because, again, the access to it on either side of those, yeah, you have to be able to experience love or know what love is in its truest form.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So because I think people would have questions, right? What is love in its truest form? What does that look like? Is it individual? Is there an overall classification of like, well, these things in particular are loving? Because I think for me, like kindness, which isn't always comfortable, is love. Like that falls under the category of love.
Mm-hmm.
So what are sort of what would we say are the foundational traits of love?
Honesty, respect fall under that category. I mean, for me, unconditional is associated with love because it doesn't matter what you do, I'm still going to love you.
Mm-hmm.
And forward, back and forth.
Because like you're talking about that unconditional part of what love is and the qualities of what love is. In order to have this discussion around mood-based love, we have to understand what love is. No, when we touch on unconditional love is all of these things all the time. However, relationships have to be conditional.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be conditional with boundaries. So you can still have unconditional love that underlies a conditional relational boundaries. There needs to be deal breakers within relationship, just for your own well-being and for the well-being of others as well.
I think that's critically important for our relationships, but in particular under this umbrella of Neonarcissism, really knowing what your boundaries are and what those deal breakers are will help you to not stay in an unhealthy relationship for extended periods of time.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's a good way to say it, for extended periods of time, because those of us that truly love at that deeper unconditional level, usually our commitment is as deep at that level as well. For there to be a deal breaker, it's extremely excruciating having to follow through with that deal breaker. So, but yeah, so incredibly important, especially in these type of relationships. There has to be those safety checkpoints in place. Mm-hmm. The parameters of what is appropriate within relationship, reasonable. So that's the conditional side of it. And I'll talk about this. I don't want to jump too far into this yet. We can do that on another day. But really, this is where we run into this cognitive dissonance when a relationship with a narcissist, especially a neo-narcissist, ends, because our unconditional love just can't turn off that quick. Mm-hmm. So we will continue to love that person and love that person and love that person, even though we may have been abused, even severely abused by that person, because it's unconditional. Even though those were the conditions of the relationship, our unconditional love is still there. So in a way, when we do draw those boundaries and say enough's enough, we still have to love our love out. We still have to honor that unconditional part of ourselves that has invested into the relationship. So a lot of people will actually question themselves, like, why am I not getting over this person? Why do I still miss this person? Why do I still love this person? Well, because you love them unconditionally. Yeah. And that is exactly why. And this is why it's so confusing for those that love unconditionally when you run into mood-based love. And now we're into the mood-based love side of it, because it's like their love is contingent entirely on their mood. So as soon as their mood shifts and they're no longer having the warm feels or the comfortable feels or the exciting feels or whatever it is, all of a sudden you get discarded, and your mind won't be able to comprehend how conditional that love actually is. It's literally, the harder you try to understand it, the more difficult it becomes to understand it.
I keep hearing this phrase that someone said a few years ago to me about how you do not get to control how much I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the game that narcissists are also trying to play, is controlling how much you love them.
Mm-hmm.
Which you can't control love. True unconditional love you can't do. But if you're constantly flip-flopping and changing the game and discarding, that's how you're trying to control that person's love.
There is freedom in realizing that you get to own the fact that you have access to unconditional love.
Yeah.
So even if you've had to set a boundary with this person or distance yourself from this person, as painful as it is, you get to continue loving them for as long as you need to, moving towards your own healing.
Yeah, and that's the other part about that phrase, you do not get to control how much I love you. And what you're saying is that when you end a relationship with someone, so if a narcissist is mood-based, they want to discard you, they also want to end you sending the love to them, which is really unhealthy for you to do, because to have that connection with somebody you are unconditionally are used to giving that love, that is healthy for you to do. So somebody trying to control you into not doing that will actually make you really sick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting game and dynamic that gets played there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that really validates my own personal experience, because what was most painful for me was for that door, that outlet of the love flowing through me to just come and hit a brick wall. That was the most painful part. And of course, I still run into those moments where it's like, I just want to let this love live through me. And especially in a romantic space, when you get used to loving with that deep level of romance, that enduring love, it still wants to endure despite the wall.
Yeah.
Right? So they've basically severed this opportunity for you to have this outlet, this love living through you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're used to having that close of an intimate flow, when that flow gets cut off, it's extremely painful.
Yeah.
So, okay, we haven't jumped into love yet. Okay, so... what love actually is in and of itself. Even outside of romantic love, when you're running into a narcissist, and even the narcissistic narrative out there is love is supposed to give you the feels. And if it doesn't give you those positive feels, well, then it's not love. But in reality, like kindness can feel extremely uncomfortable, but that is, like you're saying, a core component of what love actually is. And if we want to look at love through the lens of Greek culture, they had so many different ways to conceptualize love. So they talked about, romantic love, which would be eros love, or ludus love, which is like fun and playful love. They would talk about agape love. That's a kind of general love for all of humanity, kind of what we would perceive to be like God's love. And really, as you work down the ladder, to get to the deep love, enduring love, is what they call pragma love. That's what's missing in our culture. Mm-hmm. Is there's no true ability to tap into that level of love, where it's not about the feels. It's not about, and when I say feels, does that make sense?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it does sass. I think listeners know, right? Like that you're talking about sort of that hearts in the eyes, sort of overwhelmed, sort of covering
Butterflies.
everything, butterflies, seeing everything through rose-colored glasses, right?
So, and that's typically what we would call eros love. And then we have these different components of love as well, like philia is what is a friendship type love. So if you look at it, to get to pragma love, you can have all of the other loves involved within pragma, right? For this long enduring, like this is what 50-year relationships, like really good, healthy 50-year relationships are based on. They're based on pragma love. And so that enduring love is just long standing. It's unshakable. It's unconditional, right? And it's what two people have for each other. Whereas you can have all of the other loves cycle through within that 50-year experience, but you can't be in and out of enduring love, right? It's either there or it's not there. That's kind of the only either or type thing. So you can have these playful times with each other and these really romantic, intense romantic times with each other, and true friendship experiences with each other, and all those other layers.
So all of those can play out in different sort of moments in throughout the relationship, but the foundation and the feet in those enduring relationships is in that pragma love. I'm really fascinated by this this sort of Greek scale of love. I'm going to have to research that more. I haven't heard of this. So yeah, thanks for bringing that to the table. That's awesome.
I feel like we could do a whole course on Greek
love.
Oh yeah, we totally could. And like you're saying, really, what is love? And absolutely, it is. It's kind of that regard for the other person, right? When you say namaste to the other person, to my understanding, basically what that means is I see the divinity in you.
Yeah.
So, and it's this recognition of the divinity and the dignity of somebody else and treating them as a dignified and a real human. So it goes back to that golden rule of being able to treat somebody as you would want to be treated, right?
But okay, so if we're talking mood-based love, then I know people who've had these relationships, right? Who are just not quite sure what the interaction is going to be when they see that person, right? It depends on how that day went.
Yes. Sure. We can all have moods. We can all have these kind of emotional shifts and something and those types of things. And that's completely normal. But it doesn't necessarily, in a healthy person, it doesn't impact how much you love your significant other. It doesn't impact how much you love your children. Sure, it may impact the way you go about interacting with them to some degree, but it doesn't actually erase the experience of love for you.
Yeah, like what I'm kind of getting and how you're saying that is, okay, so my love for my son is a 10 out of 10 all the time unconditionally, but he may be frustrating me in the moment and I don't want to be with him because he's driving me absolutely up the wall, but it's still a 10 out of 10 all the time.
Exactly.
It's just in the moment it impacts that current interaction. It doesn't change the amount of love on the scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another metaphor that I like to use with this is, our moods are like waves on top of the ocean or whatever. And our love is really deep rooted at the bottom, where it's really unmovable. So it doesn't matter what's happening on the surface. Like you're saying, it's still a 10 out of 10 down here.
Yeah.
But with a neo-narcissist, you don't get that whatsoever. Basically, their love is only surface. It gets blown and tossed along with, like you're saying, the circumstances of the day determine whether you're going to be loved.
Yeah. One thing I think that might be helpful is to explain the difference between an emotion and a mood.
Okay. So emotions are basically energy in motion, where it's energy trying to dissipate itself out of the body. So the nervous system can go back to a state of balance or equilibrium. So if we hear something funny, we want to laugh. If we're sad, we'll cry. If we're angry, we want to yell. Or that's the attempt for the energy and motion to dissipate itself out of the body. Whereas feelings are feelings in location, right? Like a lump in the throat, a broken heart, a pit in the stomach, all of these types of things. This is what feelings are. So, and typically, of course, we do better with emotions as humans than we do with feelings. With feelings, basically, that's energy in location, and it tends not to move. We have to sit with them, and even though they're epicentered within us, they tend to be a little bit larger than us. It's very large feeling energy. Now, we can talk about that another time, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So then when it comes to emotions and mood, what's the difference between an emotion and a mood? Well, an emotion can come and go fairly quickly, right? You can hear something funny and you can laugh and it's almost over as quickly as it starts. Whereas a mood, it's almost like that emotion starts to cycle a little bit more. And it's almost like it gets stuck somewhere between like an emotion and a feeling, where it's just, it just kind of keeps cycling through without truly dissipating.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking a bit about it earlier today, and it's sort of, to me, like, you have the initial emotion that comes up. Somebody makes you angry. You've technically expressed it, but then you're bringing up all your history. Oh, that reminds me of so-and-so when they did that to me. And then, I can't believe that happened to me 10 years ago. And you know what? It also reminds me about what happened 5 years ago. And you know what? Come to think of it, I don't really like this person in this moment. And then, you just continue forward, and then something else happens, and it just keeps building in that story to keep that emotion continuously cycling.
Oh, that's so well said.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And then if we keep following the scale down, we say the more we carry that mood and we cycle or loop that mood through, then we run into an attitude, right? And then if that attitude becomes so pervasive, then we end up in this kind of state of being, so to speak.
It almost becomes permanent.
Yeah, right, where people look at that person and start labeling them as such. The thing is, with the neo-narcissist, they can cycle through all of these things so quickly. Now, this is what makes it a truly neo-narcissistic quality, because beyond the regular narcissistic traits, mood-based love actually starts to reflect a little bit more of what we consider to be borderline personality disorder qualities or characteristics. In borderline, we talk about something called splitting. Basically, what splitting is it's a result of dichotomous thinking. So it's basically the either or type thinking, the good, bad, the black and white, as they say. So very polarized. So dichotomous, right? Di meaning like these two different polarities. And like you're saying, as soon as they get triggered by something, it may trigger them to move to one of these dichotomous polarities. So, and then when they land on that dichotomous polarity, they will start looping on all of the things that will confirm and reconfirm what that is. So this is what happens. This is what's happening at the mental level. So then this is what they're focused on, or it starts to feed a certain narrative about a person or a circumstance. And you can even see it with them. So you can see it with a person who, oh, I love this person. They're the greatest person in the world. And then all of a sudden that person does something that they perceive to be antagonistic towards them in some way, and they'll totally flip. And anybody that's been in a narcissistic relationship has had the experience where the person thinks you're the greatest thing since sliced bread at one moment, and then on the other end, all of a sudden you're just a piece of garbage. So that's the splitting part of it. The switching, now there's another word, switching, and basically switching is the emotional end of it. So they're switching from this really positive feeling of this person to a very negative feeling of this person.
Okay.
So you get the cognitive splitting, and then you get the emotional switching.
I like that.
So, and this is why I call it mood-based love, because as soon as they split, basically their love ends, is non-existent in that moment.
Wow.
So using a lot of the
On or off?
the story to validate and justify what they want to believe and think about you.
Yeah, it totally justifies, right? And then they look for the confirmation bias on how they're going to reinforce, like you're talking about, this feeling or this emotion into more of a mood state.
Okay.
Oh, that's so great, because it's not real in the sense of like whatever stories they're trying to utilize to really hang on to whatever this choice is of this mood and this belief system about the person. That stuff's not real, right? Because that's not what's happening in the moment. And typically I would say that those stories they're making up are exaggerated. Like there might be a fraction, a percentage of truth within the story, but then it's adapted and exaggerated again to validate and justify and look for those confirmation, look for that evidence. And then of course they can blame you and hold you responsible for their mood. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that landed with everybody. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm hoping that this mood-based love concept is, like you're saying, landing in this certain way. And those that have experienced it will most likely have light bulb moments or, oh yeah, it's being articulated exactly how I experience it. Even in healthy relationship, I mean, you can't get away from it. In healthy relationship, we typically have two narratives of our partner where it's like, I love this person, I can't imagine life without them. And then we have this other kind of secondary narrative where it's like, wow, this person is impossible. And depending on the situation, it will cycle through one or the other. But the thing that we can do as healthy individuals is we can see that this is a packaged whole, right? It's not just all good and it's not just all bad. It's like, this person is a human, so we're going to get, and I'm a human, so we're going to get different experiences out of this. And this is where the enduring love comes from. You understand relationship as a process, not as where I'm landing right now is dictating the entire relationship. No. And this is ultimately what neo-narcissists or narcissists in general lack, is this ability to actually see the picture in the wholeness that it is. Yeah. They only see it through their emotional experience or their mood at the moment. That literally, like you were talking about, they just start cycling on everything that confirms it.
I'd also throw on in there in our list earlier about love is it requires compassion. And if you don't have compassion, you're not going to be able to see the person for the whole self either.
Well, yeah, because you wouldn't be giving any consideration to anything beyond yourself.
No.
So those healthier people really are seeing the person they're in a relationship with on a much deeper level, because they're accepting and seeing the whole self. And then in moment to moment, that can, we have bad days or we have bad situations in our lives, difficulties. And so we're maybe over here and not the most pleasant to live with or whatever, but the person's like, I get it. I understand why and how they're going through this and how to support them. And then the same on the other side, when they're at their most awesome, right? You also know what is motivating and informing that behavior as well. But it's not about the love on the surface of even how that's expressed. It's about the motivation and the intention behind it or underneath it. Love it.
Yes, so well said. And you don't know how to deal with something until you know what you're dealing with. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you have any comments, please leave them below.
And remember to subscribe to our podcast channel and YouTube channel and share these videos with your friends and family.
And please join our online community at neonarcissism.tv.